Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we will be listening to the second part of What If Deku Became a Vigilante. If you enjoy, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing down below, and don't forget to hit that bell icon so you get notified when videos go live. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Chapter 4, Important Conversations. Shouta jumped over the rooftops, mulling over the information that the vigilante had given him last night. His problem child has a little sister, doesn't legally exist, and is related to someone so awful that he believed the commission would kill him. Logically, Shouta could conclude that he was related to a villain, but he had no idea which villain would be so damning as to incur murder. Speaking of problem children, he saw Kitsune sitting on a rooftop, the bright green glow of his mask coming from on top of his head rather than his face. And was that Dash? Yep, that was smoke. He was vaping again. Even though it's not illegal, you do know that hurts your lungs, right? Shouta snarked, being careful to stay behind him and not catch a glimpse of his face. Maintaining the trust between them was more important than finding out his identity. Although the fact that he didn't legally exist made that probably moot, but still. The vigilante shrugged, putting the vape away and sliding his mask on. It gets me into the headspace, Kitsune said, standing up and rolling his shoulders. Besides, it's not like I'm high. Just enough to take the edge off, you know. Shouta frowned. He knew his problem child enough to tell that something was bothering him. You only vape in public when something's bothering you. Astute as ever, Eraser Dad. He gestured for the pro hero to come up, and they perched on the rooftop together. He waited, but then eventually Kitsune spoke up. Someone important offered to give me power. What sort of power? Kitsune sighed, his head tilted, and Shouta could swear he could hear the gears turning in the kid's head. It was someone on the right side of the law, he said. And it was someone who didn't know about my night job. The power is a great one, untainted, much better than I deserve. If I had it, I could help save so many people, but giving it to me would put the power in danger. Shouta could already feel the headache coming on. The combination of his kid's normally abysmal self-esteem plus whatever the fuck was going on was too much for his poor, sleep-deprived brain. So it's a moral issue rather than a physical issue. Pretty much, yeah, although there's the whole danger thing. Danger thing? Kitsune shrugged, like those words didn't just send a spike of panic through the pro hero. I'm on the run from a lot of people. This power is very important, important enough that the entire underground would be after my head if they knew I had it. Kid, that's a risk, but I'm pretty sure that you'll be fine, Shouta chose his words carefully. You've lasted as a vigilante for this long, messing with some of the most dangerous groups around. I'm sure that you'll keep the power safe. They sat in a tense silence before Shouta asked the question in his mind. What are your morals? Talking philosophy, never pegged you as the type, he teased, then sobered up a little. I guess pretty standard. No murder, don't steal unless you have to, give a helping hand if you can, don't be a needless asshole. But you know my stance on the laws. If lives are on the line, break them. People's lives are more important than the law. And a moral code is just a set of laws. I'm willing to break them if it means saving lives. And that was a loaded statement. Shouta felt the steel undertone to his words, the conviction of someone who had to do exactly what he said. Kitsune, have you killed anyone? He asked quietly, if only to satisfy his own morbid curiosity. The vigilante tensed next to him. It's a dark world out there, Eraser, he said finally. It was either them or the civilians. My hands would have either been covered by the bloods of villains or of the civilians I failed. I'm sure you understand which I chose. He understood. He understood completely. In fact. Kid, I get it, Shouta said, allowing himself to get brutally honest for a minute. I've been put in the same position, I've made the same choice. I won't tell anyone. Kitsune slumped as the tension suddenly left his small body, then he sat back up straight. But his posture was relieved rather than fearful, so Shouta'll take what he can get. As for your earlier predicament, he continued to speak, the vigilante's full attention on him. It's like you said earlier, a moral code is a set of laws for yourself. You've just got to consider which is more important to you, the lives you could save or who the power goes to. He tilted his head thoughtfully, letting Shouta's words fully sink in. Then he jumped up, the moment passed as he was filled with energy once again. Well, Eraser Dad, the night is young. He exclaimed, starting to skip backwards. People to save, villains to detain, yada yada. Have fun on your patrol. Shouta rolled his eyes, but then started running in the opposite direction. Kitsune was right after all, he did have a job to do. And if he was relieved to see that the kid clearly felt better when Shouta ran into him a few more times, then that was information he was going to keep to himself. Izuku, to put it simply, was nervous. No, nervous was an understatement. He was a living ball of anxiety. At least Eri was doing better than he was. She was wearing a different sun hat, apple blossoms tucked into the ribbon, to cover her horn. Her hair was undyed, as the Bakugos would know that she wasn't his actual sister anyways, but still in a braid. She was wearing a simple pair of sandals, a dark green dress with white lace accents that Izuku had made, and that lace was a bitch to get a hold of, but it was worth it for his little sunshine, and a pair of simple black shorts underneath. Eri was a limpet on his back, always a sucker for piggyback rides when she had the opportunity. And Izuku, always a sucker for his sister, usually lets her on. Izuku was dressed somewhat better. His curls were the same mess they always were, he doubted even a force of nature could tame them, pulled into a low ponytail like usual. He wore his red jacket even though there was a patch in the elbow because that was his best jacket, damn it, along with his best pair of jeans. They were torn in the knees, but it could reasonably be shrugged off as fashionable, and a tee that said socks. He wore his usual high tops, they were the only pair of shoes he had, modified ones notwithstanding, and the usual studs. He had taken a longer shower than usual, actually bothered with deodorant, and got a somewhat decent amount of sleep so the bags under his eyes didn't look quite so deep. They had foregone going to the beach after school, instead making their way to a very specific park. They were in a fairly middle-income neighborhood, the neighborhood that Izuku used to live in before everything happened. Even though he hasn't been there in years, he could still navigate the area through muscle memory alone, and soon he was at the park. He internally cursed at his paranoia for making him arrive half an hour early, because it seemed Kaken had the same idea. The blonde looked almost the same, his hair the same amount of spikiness, his eyes the exact shade of red he remembered them to be. The differences were stark though, his eyes holding a kind of emptiness and sorrow that he'd only seen in his own. Kaken no Bakugo was dressed like shit, dark baggy jeans and a flannel with a stud also in his ears. He was standing casually, leaning against a tree with his hands in his pockets, but his eyes betrayed his nervousness, as they scanned the clearing around him. He was similar enough that Izuku could recognize him as Bakugo, but different enough to throw him off. Then again, he was pretty sure Bakugo felt the same way about him. "Alright, Eri, I'm going to put you down, okay?" Izuku said, and when he felt the nod behind him, he let her down. He felt a small hand clutch his own, so he gave her a reassuring smile and squeezed her hand before going forward. It was sweet how she was using his own tactics to try and reassure him. As soon as they entered, they locked eyes. Izuku gave him a small, if bittersweet, smile, while Bakugo observed him. "Are you Kaken?" Eri asked, her eyes filled with wonder rather than nerves. When Bakugo gave her a strained nod, she grinned, bounding up to the blonde without fear. "My brothers told me all about you." Bakugo raised an eyebrow, surprisingly quiet, although what would Izuku know, he hasn't seen him in years. Izuku smiled, a small genuine one. "This is Eri. She's my little sister." "Adopted? Legally?" Bakugo asked, and damn, that was not the question Izuku expected. "Oh, of course legally." He flushed, shaking out his hands. What kind of question is that?" "So, definitely not," Bakugo said flatly, as Izuku continued squawking and Eri giggled adorably. Which was definitely helping Bakugo's murder attempt. "Don't worry, Zuku, I won't snitch. But at least dye her hair. Izunaya-can usually puts the green stuff in my hair when we go out, but he said it was okay, because you would know anyways," Eri giggled, bouncing on her feet. "You dumbass," Bakugo rolled his eyes, smacking Izuku in the back of the head. "You do it every time, not most of the time. Are you trying to get caught?" "First of all, watch your language," Izuku smacked him back, and God, he missed this. Light and friendly bantering rather than sharp edges like he was used to. "And nobody saw us on the way here, so we're fine." Eri's giggling broke them out of their argument, and they looked at each other. "So, you gonna explain what happened?" Bakugo huffed gruffly, and Izuku could tell that it took all of his self-control not to drop an F-bomb. It was impressive. Izuku just shook his head. Not here, somewhere more private, he said, even though they were in an empty park. Thankfully Bakugo seemed to understand what he meant, as his eyes flicked to Eri and then back. We can go back to my place, he said. The old hag and dad would be happy to see you, and you can stay for dinner. What do you think, Eri? Izuku asked. Do you want to go? Remember, it's okay if you don't. He could feel Bakugo's eyes on him as he addressed Eri. She looked between the two of them, then shook her head. I want to go with Kikin, Izunaya-kan. Izuku beamed. Alright then, do you want to go on my back again? At her nod, he swung her onto his back with a shriek of delight, then walked up to Bakugo. Now she's calling me Kikin, he grumbled as they trudged along. It was already bad enough when you were calling me that stupid name. Izuku rolled his eyes, his Bakugan wasn't rusty after all. Says the one who's still calling me Zuku, he grinned. They bantered like that the rest of the way to Bakugo's house, with Eri occasionally giggling in response to something they said. Eventually though, they were there, and Izuku's nerves were back. Oi, nerd, Bakugo bumped into him, pulling him out of his head. Get out of your head, or else I'll smack you out myself. Izuku just smiled gratefully, following his tentative friend in. Katsuki, what the fuck are you doing home already? Auntie Mitsuki's voice rang out from the kitchen. Watch your fucking language, old hag. Bakugo Katsuki shouted, pulling off his shoes. Izuku rolled his eyes, setting Eri down before pulling off his high tops. Why are you telling me to watch my damn language, you brat? Eri looked up at Izuku quizzically, and Izuku just shrugged. He mouthed they've always been like that to her, and she giggled quietly. Izuku's come over. Katsuki shouted. Izuku helped Eri pull off her own sandals. Auntie sighed from the kitchen, before coming out. Brat, you know that Izuku's. He smiled, standing up and facing his aunt for the first time in 8 years. Hi Auntie Mitsuki. Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked almost the same as he remembered, wearing a simple dress and apron and house slippers. Izuku, is it really you? He opened his arms up a little, and instantly he felt arms around him. He smiled, blinking back tears and hugging his auntie. It filled a place in his heart that he didn't realize he was missing, the part of him that hasn't been hugged by anyone except for Eri in years. It's really me, Auntie, Izuku whispered, making Auntie cry more. I promise it's really me. Katsuki dragged Izuku into his room. Uncle Masaru had been just as teary-eyed as Auntie Mitsuki, though with much less swearing. They were also both instantly taken with Eri, thankfully without questioning the legality of the situation. It took a lot to reassure them that yes, they are fine, no, they don't need to move in, and that they were aware that they could come back over any time they liked. Now, Eri was talking with Auntie and Uncle, distracting her more like it, while Katsuki was about to grill him. The door was closed behind him, and Izuku was struck with the thought that this was either the beginning of a horror movie or a sexy scene out of a rom-com, and he didn't know which he preferred. Alright, there, privacy, Katsuki growled, small explosions going off in his palms. If he were anyone else, Izuku would think the blonde was threatening him, but he knew that he would pop off small explosions when he needed to relieve stress. Or nerves. Now tell me where the fuck you've been. Izuku sighed, sitting down on his bed. Katsuki hesitated, but sat down next to him. Alright, I can't tell you everything, but I'll tell you what you can. Katsuki was about to interrupt, but he stopped himself, gesturing for Izuku to continue. My mom is actually dead. The fire wasn't an electrical accident, it was staged. A group of villains kidnapped me and set the fire intentionally to cover their tracks. The blonde's eyes were wide, and he just kept talking before he chickened out. They captured me because I was quirkless. They were trying to turn me into their weapon. I escaped a few years ago. Living on the streets wasn't pretty, but it was better than staying there. I've managed to get on my feet though, don't worry. Anyways, I found Eri about a year ago, she's in a similar position as me, don't mention it, and we've been laying low ever since. There was a tense silence in the air. Katsuki cleared his throat. He moved, and Izuku flinched, before finding himself pressed against Katsuki. His senses were filled with the smell of burnt caramel and spiky blonde hair, and arms were wrapped around his neck. Izuku was tense, but he relaxed, wrapping his arms around Katsuki's waist. "Shit, Zuku, I'm sorry, Katsuki no," Kaken mumbled. He could feel tears dripping onto the back of his jacket. Kaken, Izuku sniffed, Midori Yajin's already kicking into overdrive, despite being trained to keep them down. Being around his childhood friend brought it back, and his eyes watering up. It's okay." "No, it's not," Kaken growled, clutching him closer, moving his arms from his neck to his shoulders. I knew I was being a bastard then, but I never apologized. And then you left. I shouldn't have said any of what I said back then. Just I'm sorry." Izuku sniffled, the tears starting to slip down his face now, but he tried to keep himself in check. "It's okay, Kaken, really. No. No, it's not. Because you were hurt and now you have to go into hiding like a goddamn fugitive, and you're still hurting, and I can't do anything to help." "You're helping," Izuku muttered. "You're helping right now. I'm well, I don't want to lie to you and say that I'm fine, but I'll be okay." There was a tense moment of silence. Then Kaken spoke up. Zuku, well, my parents insisted on going to therapy, after and I've been going since, and my therapist said that it helped if you let your emotions, so if you need to cry it out, I'm right here." Izuku took a deep breath in, burying his face in Kaken's neck, and something inside him snapped. He went boneless, silently sobbing, letting everything out. The hatred, the grief, the loneliness, the tiredness, the pain. He was wrapped in safety and warmth that he hasn't had since he was 6. Eventually, he pulled back, wiping his eyes. He was sure he looked ugly, with the eye bags and red eyes, but Kaken wasn't looking at him with any sort of judgment. "You're different, Izuku mumbled, then flushed when he realized he'd said that out loud. "And not in a bad way. It's nice. I like it." Kaken's eyes went wide, and he looked away, not wanting to see his friend's face. All he heard was a gruff "you too," and he looked up to see Kaken also looking away. There was knocking on the door, and Izuku squeaked as he fell off of the bed, with Kaken shouting something he couldn't really hear. He could hear Auntie Mitsuki shouting back and Eri giggling behind the closed door. Despite his embarrassment, a small smile crept onto his face, and when Kaken offered a hand, he took it. Despite having cried his eyes out, he felt lighter, freer. And laughing along with Auntie Mitsuki, teasing Kaken, encouraging Eri, complimenting Uncle Masaru on his katsudon, he felt more at home than anywhere else. He wouldn't trade it for the world. Your favorite vigilante at Daria Kitsune. Also fuck at Daria Kitsune for taking the username, or not the real me. Please stop at Detective Elia Detector. Why are you like this? Your favorite vigilante at Daria Kitsune. As a vigilante I'm obligated to call out identity fraud Tsuki-kun. Please stop at Detective Elia Detector. I need more coffee. Chapter 5, The Rabbit Hole Goes Deeper. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. I'm about to make a mistake, so if y'all don't see me on patrol tonight I'm probably dead. Please stop at Detective Elia Detector. Excuse me? Professional child wrangler at needs more coffee. Kitsune no. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. Kitsune yes. It's a week after the sludge villain incident, a week after his life was in a collision course with Kaken's. A week after Yagi had given him the offer. Izuku and Kaken have settled into a friendship, banter, and awkwardness and familiarity. It was strange how quickly they settled into a sense of normality, like they were never separated at all. It made Izuku cry when he heard that Kaken had remembered their code to remember him by, and it made Kaken cry when he heard that remembering the code kept Izuku sane. Even between 8 years, even with the changes they've made, friendship was easy for them. But currently, he was on his way to a meeting with All Might. To accept one for all. Izuku was either really brave or really stupid. Eri would tell him he's being brave, Kaken would probably tell him he's being really stupid. Anyways, Izuku was standing on Dagaba Beach. Waiting for All Might to arrive. A meeting with All Might. It was still processing in his brain. He has a meeting with All Might. Bear with him, he's only human. Izuku stood up straighter when he saw Yagi walking onto the beach. He smiled, running over to meet the man halfway. Hello, Yagi-san. He called out, waving his arm. Hello, my boy. Yagi called out, matching Izuku's joy. I must ask, what is your name? I don't remember you telling me, although even I can admit my memory is lagging behind. No, it's okay, Izuku smiled sheepishly. It was hard not to be happy around a man, while All Might was the symbol of peace, Yagi was real. I never said. It's Midoriya Izuku. Well, young Midoriya, you've told me you reached a decision. Yagi asked. Izuku nodded. I accept. That's wonderful. Yagi pulled him into a hug suddenly, and Izuku reciprocated wholeheartedly. He may be a bit touch-starved, sue him, but it was a really good hug. Now, Yagi pulled back, putting his hands on Izuku's shoulders. I can't give you one for all yet. Not because I don't think you're worthy anymore, you still are. Yagi said when Izuku was about to say something, but because one for all is incredibly powerful. If you use too much of it at once in your small body, all of your limbs will blast out of your body. Izuku paled at that. He rather liked his limbs, thank you very much. Well, I'm not getting taller anytime soon. Yagi laughed. You're decently built, he said. A fair amount of lean muscle. But you need to be building more muscle in order to handle one for all. It should only take 9 months. Then you'll have 1 month to fully handle using the quirk, and you should be ready for the UA entrance exam. U.A entrance exam. Well, things were certainly moving fast. But, I won't be able to dash. If you're worried about money, I can certainly take care of it, Yagi said. And if it's about your younger sister, I can ask ahead of time and see if they can set up a daycare program for her while you're at school. It's always been his dream to attend UA and become a hero. A legal hero, not just skulking around the shadows and dodging the law, even if there's a part of him that screams he's a monster that doesn't deserve to be one. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I can do this. That's my boy. Izuku grinned at the praise. Anyways, you need to bulk up, and I know just the way. Cleaning the beach. I know this beach has been slowly being cleaned up over the past few years, but you can certainly help them. After all, community service is an important part of being a hero, not just locking away villains. Izuku brightened at that. Oh, actually, that's been me. At first I cleaned the beach for physical training, but now we've sort of been using it to practice with my little sister's quirk. Then you'll have plenty of experience. Now come on, there's no time to lose. Izuku cracked his knuckles, doing a few stretches, then started running. Yagi was right, there was no time to lose. He had to take advantage of every second in order to come out on top. Alright Kitsune, what the fuck did you do? Shouta asked, dropping down next to the kid. Said kid was currently tying up a few unconscious thugs in zip ties. Oi, I just knocked these guys out with tranks, Kitsune snarked back. They were the ones trying to rob a jewelry store. That's not what I meant, brat, and you know it. The kid dodged the capture weapon. How about this? Kitsune lined the thugs up outside the alleyway. I'll answer that question if dash. The vigilante ran at the pro hero, knocking him aside and continuing to run. If you can catch me. Shouta swore, pivoting to run after the kid. His partner had likely already called the police for them. Kitsune ran up a building with his grappling hooks, so Shouta followed with his capture scarf, and the game was on. They raced over the rooftops, continuing to banter. There were a few things that Kitsune said only to assure Yoni that he couldn't catch, probably wasn't meant to catch, and Shouta could only speculate what those words were before another taunt was thrown his way and he was pulled back into the race. Eventually, Kitsune slowed down in one of his usual patrol neighborhoods, and his capture scarf reached out, completely binding the teen. Oops, you caught me. The kid giggled, wiggling a little. Shouta raised an eyebrow, but loosened the capture scarf. Kitsune wiggled out, but leisurely strolled to the pro hero. You let yourself get caught, you little shit, Shouta sighed. Anyways, answers. You know how I talked about that power that got offered to me last week? The hero raised an eyebrow. I accepted it. Honestly, I was half convinced that it was going to make me explode as soon as I accepted it, but thankfully it won't. Probably. I accepted it, but I don't actually have it yet, so that's a problem for Kitsune in 9 months. Problem child, what the fuck? Anyways, I have a patrol to get to. Kitsune skipped backwards. Also, this is yours, see you around. Damn it, get back here. Shouta ran forwards, catching the object that the vigilante threw in his offhand, not really paying attention as he threw his capture scarf and tried to capture the kid. But he simply jumped off the edge of the roof, and when Shouta looked, he was gone. For fuck's sake. The hero finally acknowledged what was in his hand, and swore once again. It was his phone. He was already feeling the migraine coming on. Friendos 3, 2:19 AM. God's Mistake added Eraser Dad, Fuss Ro. Tsuki-kun, McChicken, and Jessica Rabbit. God's Mistake, Kitsune, Eraser Dad, Eraserhead, Fuss Ro. Present Mike, Tsuki-kun, Detective Tsukachi, McChicken, Hawks, and Jessica Rabbit, Midnight, are online. Eraser Dad, oh what the hell. God's Mistake, don't worry, it's not hell. God's Mistake, I have a restraining order. Jessica Rabbit, I like this kid. Tsuki-kun, first Twitter, now a GC. Tsuki-kun, I don't get paid enough for this. Eraser Dad, neither do I. God's Mistake, don't kid me Eraser Dad. God's Mistake, you work at UA. Eraser Dad, how did you? God's Mistake, smiley face, McChicken, that's a terrifying answer, have a nice day. Fuss Ro. Okay but why am I here? Fuss Ro. I love y'all don't get me wrong but I've never met you Kitsune. Fuss Ro. I'm also not on your case. God's Mistake, BC you're cool as hell? God's Mistake, also any chance to annoy Eraser Dad is a good chance. Tsuki-kun, speaking of which. Tsuki-kun, are you okay Kitsune? McChicken, oh yeah. McChicken, or Twitter. God's Mistake, don't worry. God's Mistake, I still have all my limbs. Tsuki-kun, kid what the fuck. Kitsune ended his patrol a little early, instead swinging through to the abandoned warehouse district, he never bothered learning its name. Of course, some of the warehouses were owned by companies, but seeing as this was the poorer side of the city, it was mostly bankrupted property, which was convenient for villain hideouts. Or vigilante meeting spots. The other vigilantes he met up with were the closest people he could call friends, aside from Kikin, but that was a recent development. They were kept at the same arm's length as everyone else in his life, but they got the privilege of seeing his face. Again, not that it matters because he legally doesn't exist, but it was nice to have a spot to be able to take off his mask while in costume. Plus, there's an unspoken rule that they don't know each other's real names. He stopped in the window, looking over to see that everyone had already arrived. A section warehouse was covered in beanbag chairs and pillows that the more profitable members of their group could afford, with a small kitchen in the corner for a snack bar. In another space was a med center, as well as a computer rig and mini lab for the more tech-savvy of their group to upgrade gear. The rest of the space was a large training area, to learn and improve each other's fighting styles or to just let off steam after a particularly rough patrol. Gentle criminal, quirk, elasticity. His MO was breaking into corrupt organizations while live streaming it, airing out their dirty laundry for the world to see. He was the uncle of the group, the one who made sure the kitchen was stocked with tea and that no one would die of a heart attack on a caffeine overdose, and the one with the most money from his show. La Brava, quirk, love. Her MO was helping Gentle on his show, while also hacking various places in order to find new targets. She'll also help the rest of the group as the computer wizard, and she makes sure their hideout remains hidden, as well as helping iron out Shirionai's bugs. Himi-chan, quirk, transform. Her MO was murdering rapists, serial killers, and pedophiles. She's the same age as Kitsune and thus the group baby, as well as keeping the peace and helping everyone bond. Dabby, quirk, cremation. His MO was mainly information brokering and gathering, but he also torches criminals who try to kill people when he finds them. Surprisingly, he's the common sense of the group, and also the one who makes sure the kitchen is stocked with legal and not so legal goods. It was legal to vape but illegal to sell vapes. And finally, Kitsune, quirk, that's too much of a rabbit hole to go down now. His MO was patrolling like an underground hero, trying to keep to minimal injuries while also stealing from the criminals he apprehends. Sue him, he has bills to pay. Himi-chan may be the group baby, but he's the heart of the group, the one who pulled them all together to be kind of friends. He's also the brains of the group, the one who mainly planned everything out and kept on top of the latest moves of the big villain groups. EY, it's the man of the hour. Himi-chan grinned, as Kitsune jumped down, the window closing behind him automatically. He bowed, causing her to giggle and clap for him. He slid the mask up on top of his head, grinning as he fully took in the scene. Himi-chan was laying on a beanbag, lazily sipping a Bloody Mary that had the alcohol replaced with blood. Dabi made them for her. La Brava was in the lab, working on Himi-chan's support gear with some difficulty. Dabi was on the training floor, going through some movements from a martial art he didn't recognize, thankfully not using his fire. Gentle was sitting at the bar in the kitchen, on a laptop as he sipped tea. Oh, perfect timing. La Brava looked up, waving him over. Something in Himi-chan's compressor broke, and I can't fix it? I'm on my way, he smiled, taking the time to stretch and crack his back. Himi-chan snickered at the sight, so he flipped her the bird and made his way over to the lab. The compressor was one of Kitsune's pride and joys. It allowed her to take the blood of someone with a syringe, then compress the blood into a little pill that she could take whenever she wanted. Now the syringe that was supposed to be there was not there. How are you missing a syringe? Kistun asked. Look, it's not my fault that the fucker had a knife. Himi-chan shouted from her spot. La Brava looked back up at him worriedly. I know you custom made these syringes, so I can't just order another one. We have the parts, but you're the only one capable of recreating it. He sighed, simply bending over and using Shiryoni to unlock the safe under the counter. He pulled out a replacement syringe, closing it back up. Oh, La Brava scratched the back of her neck sheepishly. I guess that makes sense. Wait, so is that's what in that safe? Himi-chan spoke up. Replacement parts for all of our support gear. Yeah, Kitsune shrugged, pulling his mask down again as he welded the syringe to the wire. I keep it locked because I don't want any villains getting into it and tampering with the equipment or replicating my gear. Everyone else in the warehouse looked at each other, even Dabi and Gentle. So, Dabi spoke up, what do we do with the money if we all lost the bet? He pushed up the mask, raising an eyebrow as he finished working on the compressor. And what did you guys think was in there? A shit ton of money. Shiryoni's mainframe. Those notebooks you mentioned with plans to take down almost every hero and villain in existence. The good blood that Dabi puts in my Bloody Marys. He rolled his eyes. Give the betting money to me. Everyone grumbled, but eventually Kitsune was 800 yen richer. He sighed in relief as he flopped down onto one of the bean bags, and Dabi, bless the man, threw him a vape from the kitchen. Oh, by the way, Kitsune, La Brava piped up, flopping down onto a different bean bag. Sensing the impromptu meeting, as well as tradition by this point, Dabi claimed his own bean bag. Gentle dragged his stool over, holding his tea in one hand and his tea plate in the other. Some stuff came up on the forums. Fire away, Kitsune said, letting light blue smoke come from his mouth and feeling himself relax. La Brava had a program that combed through various villain forums on the dark web and alerted them whenever certain keywords popped up. The Shihasakai are on the move. He sat up then, still a little slouched over, but eyes locked on La Brava. What are they up to? It seems that they're still looking for Eri, but they're also looking for someone by the name of Akatani Mikumo. A shiver went down his spine, and he could tell that Dabi recognized the name too. Himi-chan and Gentle just sent questioning looks at each other. Do they have a death wish? Dabi muttered, and then 3 pairs of eyes were on him. Who's Miku-chan? Himi-chan asked, voice serious despite the cutesy nickname. Akatani Mikumo is the true name of the monster of Japan. Himi-chan paled, but the Vigilante duo still looked confused. No one knows if he's real or not, but rumor has it that he can steal quirks and use them against you. No one knows his motivations or reasoning, he just sometimes appears and slaughters an entire group or gang before disappearing again. That's the only thing anyone knows about him. Right, but wasn't his only confirmed sighting the Shihasakai massacre a year ago? Himi-chan asked. Why would they want him? Now that Eri's gone, they want to see if they could use quirk to the same effect, Kitsune piped up, voice devoid of the usual snark. And if they could torture him as revenge for the massacre. The warehouse was deadly quiet. Kitsune sighed, listen, I know you've been helping with the Shihasakai, but you guys can't continue. Just let me handle them. If they're looking for Akatani Mikumo, they have some connections, powerful connections, and it's too dangerous for you guys to get involved. But what about you? Gentle asked, concern showing on his face. If it's dangerous for us, it's also dangerous for you. Kitsune shook his head, leaning back and taking another breath of his vape, letting the chemical forcibly relax him from the panic attack he was on the verge of. "You know something, don't you?" Dabby asked, breaking the tense silence in the warehouse. "Is it related to your weird insistence on tracking the Shihasakai and the League of Villains movements? Are you ever gonna tell us what's up about that?" Himi-chan whined. "And who the hell Eri is?" He shook his head, slumping into the beanbag, not quite sober but not completely high. "Yes, I know something, but seriously, it's dangerous," he said. "Simply knowing could put you all in danger." Sensing that they weren't going to get anything out of the vigilante, they left him to his vape, continuing to talk about other matters around him. Eventually, he ran out, and waved to his kind of friends as he left out the window he came in. Things just got a hell of a lot more complicated. Chapter 6, An Expose and a Roadblock. 1 month to the entrance exam. Gentle Criminal at Gentle Criminal. Thank you to Daria Kitsune for joining us in our most recent expose. It was truly wonderful to work with you. Link to the newest episode here. God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm always down to bring corrupt organizations to light. Laughing face, McChicken at Official Hawks. How are you both a ray of fucking sunshine and a little bitch? God's mistake at Daria Kitsune. It takes talent to be me. Please stop at Detective Elliot Detector. Please, for the love of everything, stop. Gentle's expose number 40, Oishi Naoko, HPSC. The video starts off with Gentle Criminal and Kitsune sitting in Gentle Criminal's office, the recognizable intro to every episode. The table and chairs were recognizable as from Victorian England, made with dark oak and red velvet cushioning. The backdrop was a sheet made out of star-covered fabric, and the china set was the familiar white with gold accents, Gentle Criminal's signature set. Both vigilantes were in their usual attire, and they were both drinking tea, with Kitsune miming the gesture by bringing it up to the mouth on his mask. Gentle Criminal, welcome, Internet, to my humble corner of the world, Gentle's exposes. Today is a very special episode, as we are here with a special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself? Kitsune, hello, thank you for having me. I'm Kitsune, the Watcher of the Night, and my job is to take to the streets and protect the parts of Musudafu that the heroes often overlook. Gentle Criminal, thank you for making it, Kitsune. It's not often we have guests on our show, especially not one as well known as yourself. Kitsune, it's an honor to take the title of first guest, especially since I'm a big fan of the work you do here. Gentle Criminal, oh, you flatter me. It's true, you are our first guest, but what an impact you've made. Crime in the districts you patrol goes down by 30%, that's no small feat. Kitsune, now who's the flatterer? La Brava could be heard giggling behind the camera. Kitsune, I'm just doing the right thing, even if in the eyes of the law it might be wrong. Saving lives is more important than following the law. Gentle Criminal, well, I'd love to continue to talk philosophy, but we do have an expose to continue with. Being a fan, I presume you are familiar with our tradition? Kitsune, oh, I'm well aware. He lifts the tea bag out of the cup to show to the camera. The tea I'm currently drinking is the ginger root fox, quite a clever choice. And you? Gentle Criminal, he also lifts the tea bag out of the cup to show off. Mango sour is my tea today. It seems to be a bit of a theme, officials that should be working for the people being soured by the power that it gives them. Kitsune, then I believe it's time to show them how bitter this fox can be. Gentle Criminal, La Brava, take it away. The video transitions to La Brava, standing in front of a lavender-striped background. In the left corner a little above her are pictures which display something related to what she talks about. La Brava, today's target is Oishi Naoko, a member of the Heroic School Regulations branch of the Hero Public Safety Commission. The responsibility of the branch is to create regulations for hero schools in Japan. However, we are currently investigating Oishi for child neglect, cruelty to animals, aiding in drug trafficking, and bribery. How can an official who abuses children and animals be trusted to do what's right to ensure the safety of our future heroes? The video transitions from La Brava segment to footage in Musudafu. Gentle Criminal and Kitsune are hiding in the forest, an estate visible from the distance, and Kitsune's mask lights are off. The area is blanketed in moonlight, the only companion to the vigilantes in the night. Gentle Criminal, We are on the ground now, to break into Oishi's estate and gather the evidence to expose this dastardly fiend. La Brava hacked their security earlier to get their security plans, but she wasn't close enough to turn any of the systems off. The camera turns to Kitsune, who had one hand up to his mask and his head tilted like he was pondering something. Kitsune, our best bet is to enter through the underground tunnels. He meets up with various gangs for drug deals, and they need a place to enter conspicuously without being seen in broad daylight. There should be an entrance in the forest around here, it's just a matter of finding it. La Brava, the only connection to the underground I could find on the security plans was the beginning of a tunnel in the wine cellar. We could be combing the forest for hours before we find anything. Kitsune, I'll have sure Yoni scan the forest for an entrance as we move. It should only take an hour at most before we find something, her search radius is 30 meters. The footage is sped up quickly to not bore the audience, but it shows the two vigilantes trekking through the forest to find the entrance. It slows down just before Kitsune's mask pings. Kitsune, found it? The camera turns to the left, and finds a rather thick tree. Upon closer inspection, however, there is a cutout of a door in the tree trunk. Kitsune, I'm obligated to say that is a very thick tree. With 3 CS. La Brava's muffled giggling and gentle criminal sigh could be heard. Kitsune moves to the tree and knocks on it, revealing that the tree is made of metal. Sure Yoni, any way to open this? He lifts his hand to his mask again, and there is a muffled monotone female voice, the words can't be distinguished. Gentle criminal, what did she say? Kitsune, she says there's an electric lock, but it's only accessible from the inside. It opens magnetically, and again, the only handle is from the inside. La Brava, from the security plans I saw, the system doesn't extend to the door out here. If we brute force it, the security won't go off. Kitsune, then allow me. Gentle criminal, can you help me with this? Gentle criminal picks Kitsune up by the armpits, and he goes to put the solace of his high tops on the door. Tapping the mask, he grunts, pulling his legs in as gentle criminal also starts to pull and walk backwards. The metal door pops free, and when Kitsune taps the mask again, the door falls to the forest floor. La Brava, what a masterful display of technology. Can you explain for the viewers? Kitsune, of course. My shoes, which I made myself, have a special strip on the bottom that's magno-electric. When activated, I can stick to metal, and the force of me and gentle criminal pulling on the door was enough to override the weaker magnetic force of the door. That's science, baby. The camera moves to the open tree trunk, looking down at the darkness. Kitsune, I'll go first. La Brava steps back and Kitsune steps into frame, the lights of his mask on and illuminating the forest in a soft teal light. I have the lights, and the infrared and night vision built in here. La Brava, darn it, I should have brought my night vision lens. Gentle criminal, it's alright, we know for next time. Besides, I think Kitsune makes a much better flashlight. Kitsune snaps his fingers, then salutes the two vigilantes and slides down the ladder. Gentle criminal goes next, and the camera is jostled a little bit as La Brava follows, landing in the arms of gentle criminal before being set down. A tunnel similar to a subway is revealed, illuminated by Kitsune's mask. Kitsune, you would think for a rich man, the tunnels would be better decorated. 0 out of 10, definitely not making it onto MTV Cribs. Gentle criminal, the decoration is quite lacking. If it were I would have added some candelabers, made the sides out of cobbled stone, and added a nice deep purple carpet. I'd put up some paintings, tie the whole look together. Kitsune, it certainly fits the whole Victorian vibe you've got going on. Personally, I would go for sleek black walls, with green lights in the walls to illuminate the way forward. I also would add some rail cars, magnetized to keep it with the aesthetic, to make the path faster. Maybe have some smoke machines, just to fit with the future vibe. La Brava, wow, you have an eye for design. Kitsune, what can I say? I know my aesthetic. Though, if I had an unlimited budget, I would totally make this tunnel an aquarium tunnel, like from Animal Crossing. Fish on all sides, what more could you need in life? Gentle criminal, Animal Crossing? Kitsune, it's a PQ video game. One of my favorites actually, the only point is to relax. La Brava, the Kitsune, watcher of the night, relaxing. Kitsune, hey, I get enough action on the job. Even I need a few hours to clock out and decompress. I don't just vape for 3 hours straight. Gentle criminal, with what I've seen, you had me fooled. Kitsune, you wound me, gentle. I don't just do drugs in my off time. La Brava, you continue working in your off time. I'm convinced you don't have an off time. Kitsune, hey, evil never rests. Case in point, right now we're breaking into the Oishi estate for evidence in the middle of the night. Gentle criminal, that may be true, but you're going to have a heart attack from the amount of espresso you drink. Kitsune, I haven't died yet. Gentle criminal, that's hardly. La Brava, we're here. The camera stops, as they stand in front of a door, made of metal and half a foot off the ground, the size of a large painting. There's a panel next to the door. Gentle criminal, alright, hand me the camera. La Brava, work your magic. The camera shifts, and suddenly La Brava is on screen. She plops down next to the panel and opens a laptop, the case covered in heart stickers. Kitsune leans over her shoulder, watching the screen and then looking back up at the camera. Kitsune, yeah, that's all foreign to me. La Brava giggles, you can hack decently. Kitsune, I can forge a few documents. That is a masterpiece. Gentle criminal, she's the best for a reason. No one else can come close to her skills with the keyboard. After a few moments, the door opened with a click. They slipped through quietly, sneaking through the darkened hallways of a large mansion. Gentle criminal, whispering, so, Kitsune, do you want to explain what we're doing now? Kitsune, also whispering, we're currently sneaking through the hallways because La Brava took down the security system. We're going to get evidence of the drug trafficking, as that's gonna be the easiest thing to put him behind bars without breaching anyone's privacy. Gentle criminal, whispering, it's truly a genius plan, simple and effective. And the charge we're bringing him in for, truly magnific. Kitsune, whispering, gets up close to the camera. Sometimes I have brain cells despite being Jared, 19, and never learning how to fucking read. The camera turns to Gentle criminal's gobsmacked face and La Brava's giggling could be heard. Gentle criminal, whispering, is this another one of those Vine things? Kitsune, whispering, you're learning. The footage fast forwards through them sneaking through the compound, and then gets back to normal speed in front of an office door. La Brava, from behind the camera and whispering, the security system is still down, so you should be able to open it. Gentle criminal, whispering, do the honor. Kitsune opened the door, everyone shuffling in, before he shut the door behind him. The office is smaller, made of dark wood paneling and dark red paint, dark hardwood on the floor. There are a couple of bookshelves with books that have unreadable titles, and the desk is large, with a few photos that couldn't be seen and a nameplate that says Oishi Naoko. La Brava, the office is soundproof, we can be as loud as we want. Gentle criminal, excellent. Hand me the camera my dear, you should be able to star in the episode as well. The camera is jostled a little, as Gentle criminal is no longer seen, but instead La Brava. Kitsune, work it, girl. La Brava struck some poses for the camera. Yeah. You go. La Brava, alright, the safe is under his desk. They moved over to his desk, showing the safe underneath. As they passed the desk, all of the photos were covered in black boxes. Kitsune, this dumbass thought that he could get away with letting the safe collecting his sins be connected to his security system. All we have to do is open it. La Brava, as our special guest, you should do the honor. Kitsune, no, you got us most of the way here, you open it? I already got the office door. La Brava, if you insist. She opened the safe. They started pulling out documents, and you can see various drug deals organized like business transactions. They showed off a few pages to the camera, then La Brava passed them to Gentle criminal behind the camera. La Brava, those papers will be delivered to the police as soon as this video goes up. She closed the safe behind her. Now, how are we gonna get out of here? Kitsune, have you guys ever traveled by Vant? The day before. Izuku stretched in satisfaction, letting his back crack. Next to him, Eri mimicked him, which made him and Yagi chuckle at her antics. Izuku was getting stronger, noticeably filling out. The time spent at the beach was really helping him, even though he complained when Small Might as All Might and Eri stood on whatever he was trying to move. He was more sure of his steps, having lean muscle to back his barbed tongue whenever he went out as Kitsune, not that he didn't have it before, but more of it. He could throw an actual punch without his wrist breaking. In addition, Izuku was pretty sure that Yagi had noticed that he was too thin to be getting enough food, so after their workouts, he would treat them to dinner. They went to various restaurants and even had a few picnics. Eri was always delighted in whatever they were eating. The Midoriyas would go over to Kiken's house for dinners and just to hang out. Him and Kiken would train together, play video games, study for the UA entrance exam, normal best friend things. It was a little unsettling just how perfect their friendship felt, how right the world seemed to be these past few months. Even as Kitsune, he hasn't taken as many injuries and has taken down a few drug rings. Life was great. Which was why it was the perfect time for it all to go to shit. Last night he had already forged the documents necessary for Izuku and Eri to legally exist. Midoriya Izuku was a 14-year-old kid living in an apartment alone with his little sister Midoriya Eri. Their custody was under Midoriya Sakuku, their uncle currently living in America who sends them money and checks in with them over the phone every week. Izuku's quirk was superpower, an emitter quirk that was a basic physical enhancement quirk. Eri's quirk was backstep, a quirk that centered around her horn but is unknown what it does because she's young. Izuku decided to lie to protect her from overhaul. Now, on a picnic with Yagi and Eri in that park they first met at, Izuku had his laptop open to send in his application to the UA Hero course. Everyone was silent, breaths held as the clicking of his keyboard signaled his progress. Izuku took a deep breath in, then clicked submit. They waited with bated breaths, watching the screen as the little symbol in the corner rolled around. Waiting for the automatic computer to confirm that the application had been sent in. And your application submission was denied. Everyone stared at the screen. Izuku frantically started reading, one phrase spinning around his head. Blacklisted from all hero courses. But why? Yagi muttered. Eri sniffled, and Izuku tore his eyes away from the screen. Tears were welling in her eyes. Does that mean Izunaya can't be a hero? Oh, sunshine, Izuku muttered, pulling his little sister close to him. You saved me, she cried, gripping onto his jacket. You saved me, and you wanted to save so many people. You should be a hero. You are a hero. Yagi cleared his throat, getting their attention. There's still a chance, he said. If you get high enough in the UA Sports Festival, then Nedzu would have to put you into the hero course, and the commission couldn't do anything about it. Izuku smiled, wiping the tears out of his eyes, then started filling his application for the Gen Ed course. How did you know that? He asked. Don't go telling anyone, Yagi said with a wink, making Eri giggle. But I'm going to be teaching at UA next year. Izuku's eyes widened, then paranoia from years of bad teachers kicked in. They were villains but still. You're taking some teaching classes, right? Of course, my boy. I'm getting some advice from my fellow teachers as well, as they are experienced in teaching heroics. Izuku smiled, sending in the application for U.A.'s Gen Ed course and having no problems with the submission this time. The air tensed though, and he looked over at Yagi. If I can ask, young Midoriya, he asked, why are you blacklisted from heroics? Izuku gnawed on his bottom lip, looking down at his hands. He could feel Eri wrapping her arms around one of his, and was touched that she was trying to cheer him up. But all he could feel was the insecurities pressing down onto his chest. He knew he'd been lying to Yagi, leading him on without telling him who he really was, but he was scared of losing Yagi, even though he would deserve it. Izuku felt a small finger poke his cheek, and he snapped back into awareness. Guilt gnawed at his stomach when he realized that both Yagi and Eri were worried. He gave them a small smile, taking a deep breath and steadying himself. Sorry about that, he said shakily, but then got poked in the face again. You can't apologize, Eri frowned. I don't need to say sorry when I go to the bad place in my head, so you don't have to either. Izuku chuckled, squeezing her hand. You're right little sunshine, he said, then steeled himself. He faced Yagi head on, and could see the confusion and concern on his face. He smiled genuinely, squeezing Eri's hand again. I'm sorry for not telling you this earlier, but I'm related to a villain. A pretty high-ranking one. I've tried my best to keep myself and Eri from him, but that doesn't change it. It's okay if you want to give one for all to someone else. There were a few moments, and then Yagi was speaking. Young Midoriya, he said, in a soft and firm tone that reminded him of Eraserdad and fuzzy memories of his mom. Who you're related to doesn't matter. I chose you because of your spirit. You're still worthy, and I'm still going to give you one for all tomorrow. Izuku wiped away his tears, letting his mentor and younger sister pull him into a hug. He let them hold him as he pulled himself back together, a little closer to his dream than he was. Maybe there was a roadblock, but he had his family, and that's what mattered. Thanks, Yagi-sensei. Zoku-Kiken. Guess who's been blacklisted from the hero course BC? The HPSC are all a bunch of bastards. Who do I have to kill? Kiken. We talked about this. Who do I have to beat down? Kiken. I don't know yet, but I can transfer into the hero course if I get far enough in the sports festival. You better. IDC about these other extras. Or shitty nerd ass better be there so that it's a real challenge. Once I get into the hero course I'm gonna kick your ass. No, I am gonna kick your ass. No, I'm gonna. No, I am gonna. No, I. Eri says that if we fight each other we can't be the Wonder Duo together and that would make her sad, so I guess I'm not kicking your ass. Fine. I don't wanna make the unicorn cry. Alright, that's where we'll leave off for the day. Thanks so much for listening along with me today. If you enjoyed, please like and comment down below. It really helps with the algorithms. I look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao for now, lovelies.